Alright, we're going to be talking to you about the Portal to Portal Act. I'm Jeffrey Burris.
And I'm Michaela Lockridge.
One thing that people working want is to be rightly compensated for the amount of work that they do. Determining when to be compensated can be difficult in many cases. Should an employee be paid for travel time during work hours? Should that employee be compensated for the amount of time he goes through security on the way to work? Employees can be taken advantage of if they do not know the rules and regulations for the time they should be paid at work. Imagine that you are a contractor for a construction company, and the cost of gas from job site to job site is more than the revenue the company makes. Should you be compensated even though his traveling during the work is losing the company money? You may be surprised to answer this scenario, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The Portal to Portal Act originates from many hours of overtime worked after World War II. It is part of the Fair Labor Standards Act to try and set a standard of pay for all employees. It set the standard work week hours and the amount of overtime, which is time and a half pay, one should be compensated for. It was found that the time spent traveling to work and non-essential activities before and after work was not compensable, meaning that you are not entitled to be paid for the time it takes you to, say, walk from your car to the time clock. Only principal activities are compensable under the Act, and that opens up the question, are activities such as security clearances and traveling during the workday and duties before and after clocking in and out an integral part of the employee's workday? Gorman v. Consolidated Edison Corporation in 2007 said that security screenings going to work were not part of an employee's principal activities, and thus not compensable time under the Portal to Portal Act. That same day, another case, Bonilla v. Baker Concrete Construction Incorporated, came to the same conclusion that employees are not entitled to pay during security screenings. In the case of Busk versus Integrity Staffing Solutions in 2013, the employee of a warehouse were required to go through a security screening before exiting the warehouse to prevent theft. The employees were not compensated and fought for compensation. The appellate court decided that since the security screenings were to prevent theft of the product the employees handle, it was part of the principal duties and they should be compensated for their time. In 2015, the Supreme Court later decided that if the act of security screening at the end of the day was removed, the employees' duties would not be affected. That overturned the case in favor of the company. We have mentioned principal activities a few times by now, and those are duties that are essential for the employee to complete their job. They do not include non-essential duties, such as waiting to change into protective clothing for a poultry worker. Waiting is 2 steps removed from the principal activity of interacting with the poultry, but putting on the clothing is essential for performing the job, and therefore compensable. This definition is left to interpretation, and it is up to the court system to decide what activities will be deemed compensable. In the recent case of Integrity Staffing Solutions versus Busk, the court decided that the employees should still move packages in the warehouse without security screenings, and therefore it is not a principal act.
Looking more in depth at the Integrity Staffing Solutions case, the employees of this company sued because they had to wait in a security clearance for up to 25 minutes. The court initially dismissed this case because the security clearances were not considered an integral part of the employee's work duties. This case was appealed in favor of the employees, but when it was eventually brought to the Supreme Court, they ruled that the employees were not entitled to compensation. An important point brought up in court was that if Integrity Staffing Solutions were to eliminate the security clearances, no safety hazards would be posed towards their employees. Therefore, the security clearances were not compensable. Security checks are common among government agencies and distributors. So this case is important to many workers regarding what hours they should be paid for. The right to overtime pay under the Fair Labor Standards Act was taken away by the Portal revision, which relieves the employer of any liability to pay overtime if failure to pay was in good faith reliance. Good faith reliance is a commonly used defense, making it hard for the plaintiff to receive any compensation for overtime work performed. Recovery of overtime pay is difficult also due to the De Minimis Act. This says that if a plaintiff brings a case to court where they are asking for a small amount of compensatory payment, it is usually a waste of the court's time. These cases are dismissed right off the bat. Preliminary and post-preliminary activities based on the productivity of the employee's work is seen as more important than the benefit received from the employer when looking at the compensability of these activities. In our opinion, most preliminary and post-preliminary activities should not be compensable to protect businesses and the Treasury from excessive liabilities. If these activities were compensable, hundreds of millions of dollars in claims would be brought to court and burden on the businesses and our U.S. Treasury. The time that is taken for security clearances or time travel to work is irrelevant when employees seek claims. It should be the responsibility of the business to cut time needed for these security screenings to appease their employees. However, excessive periods of time taken for these activities should be compensated to the employees. We agree with the courts that travel to and from work should not be compensable, but travel between work sites should be. If preliminary or post-preliminary activities benefit the employer, we think the employee should be compensated, but not at the price of overtime pay. This would protect the employees' and employers' rights.
Again, let's imagine that we're an employee at the construction company. Should you be compensated even though you're not creating enough revenue for the company? To decide this, we'll look at if what we're doing is classified as a principal activity. You are hired to be a contractor, and therefore it is expected that you will drive from work site to work site. You're completing this activity during your work day, even though your company is losing money because of the cost of your activities. You should be fairly compensated for your travel time, as this is a principal activity.
Thank you so much for your time.